So the Fate franchise is one of my favorite franchises in just anime overall, so every time something new comes from it, I'm always ready to watch it, so that's why I'm doing this review here. Now I'm gonna have a little bit of bias probably, and I will be probably a little bit harsher on this show just because of of how much I like this series. So I don't know, let's start with Fate Apocrypha. So the story is simple here. Just like the other shows, servants are summoned to get the Holy Grail, and the Holy Grail grants whatever wish you want, and they have to fight in a type of tournament, and that's really the story here. Servants are heroes from mythology or from the past. The story takes place in an alternate dimension where the events of Fate Zero and the events of Fate Stay Night never happen, so you don't have to worry about those characters really. So you kind of don't have to watch previous Fate shows, but they kind of don't explain stuff here, so you really do, because they just assume you know what they're talking about. Anyway, in this show, 15 heroes are summoned instead of 7, the traditional 7, and they're split into 2 groups, the red group and the black group, and they have to fight each other, and then once those 2 groups fight, whoever loses, then the remaining survivors have to fight within each other, and then whoever wins from that gets the Holy Grail. So right away there is a problem here, if you can tell. Previous shows like Fate Zero had 25 episodes to talk about 7 characters. In this show we've got the same 25 episodes to talk about 25 characters. So immediately you know that there will be a lot of characters who would just die with very little to no backstory, no character development, nothing like that. So you will have to be ready for that. Some characters you just don't really care about, and they're like, oh, they died, whatever. That was still the case in Fate Stay Night and Fate Zero, where some characters you were like, it doesn't really matter, but for the most part you cared about every single character in those shows. So in this one you care about a lot of characters, just a whole lot less, and they also kind of remove the fact that servants or masters exist in this show. Masters are basically not seen throughout this show, just a couple, but they're not really a big focus in this one. About the masters' motivations, about the characters' motivations, they're just not really as important in here. Another immediate problem I had with this show is the main character Sieg, as he is our main character, but he is your typical anime character where he must save everybody. That's the kind of character he has. He has a little bit of differences from other characters, but really he's just the stereotypical or the standard anime character that we've all seen. You know, he really does feel generic, and it just sucks that he was the one who was most focused on in this show, as I feel like there was another master that was just way more interesting, and I wish they would focus on him more instead of Sieg. But after watching Fate Zero, my expectations were way high about who could lead a show, as Kiritsugo in that show was just really interesting, and we got Sieg instead, so that was really unfortunate. So Kairi Shisogo, or Shishigo, there you go, Kairi Shishigo, he is the bounty hunter in this show, and he was the other master that I mentioned that he is way more interesting. He's a fun character, he's interesting, and there's just way more to him than I felt like there was to Sieg. At first I thought he was going to be the main character. He's really the first master we see in the show, and he also summons Saber of Red, which is Mordred, and if you know, Mordred is, well, in this show it's the son of King Arthur, so I thought, yeah, this makes sense, this should be the main character, because it's the daughter of the main character of the entire franchise, really, and this guy is way interesting, or at least fun and interesting, so I thought he was going to be the main character, but unfortunately he wasn't. You know, every time the duel of Mordred and whatever, Kairi Shishigo is on screen, you know, everything's just way more fun, and the fight scenes are cool with them, the character, just the talk between them is really fun. So yeah, there's just definitely more, it's definitely a high point in the show. So now that I'm talking about servants, let's kind of talk a little bit about them. You will definitely not be getting characters as memorable or as cool as Iskander or Gilgamesh from previous shows, but there are some characters that are worth mentioning. Rider of Red is a really cool and awesome guy. His bravado, his confidence in the show is really fun to see, and he's interesting. He's always really fun to watch, especially when he's paired up with the Archer of Black. Those 2 characters combined are really, really cool, and they're interesting. I'm kind of surprised that the Rider really isn't a Lancer, because for the most part in this show, Lancers are always the cool guys. So I'm surprised he wasn't a Lancer, but he's some character that stuck out to me. Lancer of Red is another cool guy in this show. I mean, his fights are more personal, more interesting, I feel, which is something that this show really missed. Now, I watch the Fate series because I like to watch the ideas, the personalities, the beliefs that each character has, and how they clash together with other characters of different eras, and that's really why I like this show. The talking parts, well, I'm with the action obviously, but those are what is cool to me, is the ideas and concepts. That's why the Banquet of the Kings is such a great scene in Zero, is because it's a clash of ideas, and it's really just a talking team with a clash of ideas, and that was what was really cool, and that really was what is missing in this show. Because our main character is Sieg, who's a homunculus, and he's not a hero, and the characters split into groups. There's a lot less talk about ideas as a whole in this show. Lancer brings a little bit of that, Saber of Red brings some of that, and Archer of Black does too, along with Rider. And most importantly, Ruler in this show brings the most conflict of ideas to the show. Ruler is the most developed character in the show by far. She brings, like I said, the biggest conflicts to the show, and she really is the main servant of the show. I don't want to spoil too much about her, but yeah, she really, I feel like, holds the show together, and if it wasn't for her, I really wouldn't have continued watching it. And I don't know, besides just her character, I liked her character design and her voice. I like the voice a lot, but I just liked her character design. So let's kind of talk a little bit about art of this show. So Fate Apocrypha felt a lot more, what we would say, anime than other previous shows in this series, and by that I mean just look at the female designs here. I can kind of give a pass to Saber because her clothing is a reflection of her character personality and ideas, but for a lot of these characters it really just is for sex appeal and no real other reason. And maybe that's not a problem for some people, but it's a problem when this camera is really just focused on their ass for no reason, even during combat. And I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't feel like this was a show for sex appeal. But maybe that's not a problem with you. While there might not be a problem, there is a huge problem with the quality. It goes up and down, really, especially towards the first half of the show is fine, it's okay. But the second half really dips in quality so hard. And, I knew it wasn't going to be as good as Zero or Unlimited Blade Works, as this is done by A1 Pictures instead of Ufotable. But, by the clips that I'm showing right now, you can tell what I mean by a huge drop in quality. So just the animation was so bad sometimes I just had to talk about it. And kind of related to art, but more about the writing of the show. The show has some big, shonen moments, big explosions, stuff like that, where it's just shoot bigger stuff to kill the person. Whoever shoots the biggest laser wins. It's not really about strategy and battle tactics, but more of who shoots the biggest thing wins. So I kind of found that disappointing, because there was a little bit of that in Zero and in Unlimited Blade Works, but not as much. It was a lot more about thinking or just combat movements. I don't know, I just felt like there was way more of that in this show. And I think this stuck out to me more because the fight that I was super excited to see ended up just being a big explosion thing of who explodes things bigger wins. And even though that character earlier in the show shows lots of tactics and lots of thinking in the way that they were fighting to end his fights, just big explosions, it was kind of dumb. Plus mixed with the low animation and the fight choreography, I ended up just getting lost because I just did not care. It was just explosion after explosion after explosion with bad quality, and I was like, I just got bored and lost really interest in the fight. So that's a big problem, in my opinion. Although there is one fight in the show that is really cool, with it's just fist fighting, and that was awesome. I really like that scene. So luckily that fight was done with high quality, but really a lot of the fights they were really bad. So to conclude, this show really does feel like the worst of the Fate franchise. Characters are interesting, but you won't really get an Iskander or Gilgamesh. There's really only one fight that stands out in my mind, even though there was way more fights in this show because there are 14 or 15 servants, but just fights were not as interesting. Sieg brought down the show a lot to me, and while Ruler, along with Mordred and Shishugo, was able to hold the show, I honestly really only watched the show for them. But this is one that I would just say people that it's not a good introduction to the show or to the series as a whole, and I would only really recommend this to people that already have watched Fate and just really want to watch some more. So that's really what I will say. If you really need more Fate, yeah, this is fine, but as a whole I wouldn't recommend it to people that have never seen or are trying to get introduced into the show. So anyway, that's my review for it. You can watch the show over on Netflix, at least in the US. I'm not sure about other countries, but anyway, yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll leave a little links to some other stuff on my channel that you can watch. And thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you guys next time.